A week before her birthday, my daughter told me, "The best gift would be if you just died." So I gave her exactly that, by cutting off the money for her house and stripping her of everything. What I left on her table the next morning finished her off without a single word. Subscribe to the channel and share your stories in the comments. And now let's get started. Monday mornings in Seattle always began with noise. The hiss of the espresso machine I'd splurged on 10 years ago, the rhythmic clatter of pans against my cast-iron stove, the hum of the city just outside the windows of my Capitol Hill condo. My life had long since condensed into these rituals. Coffee steaming in the cup I'd bought in Florence, warm bread pulled from the oven, a dining table littered with perfume samples, vials of oils and resins, blotter strips stained with scents in the making. My perfume studio, small, niche but thriving, was not just my livelihood. It was the only creation that had never betrayed me. At 52, I had learned to appreciate structure, to hold on to it like a rope in a storm. I woke, I brewed, I tested fragrances, I kept books balanced. The routine steadied me. My son Alex would drop by before work, sometimes with Megan, sometimes alone, and I would pretend we were still the kind of family where mornings were shared. Pretend that the world had not taught me better. That Monday, Alex arrived in a storm of motion, already in his charcoal suit, shoulders squared, tie knotted perfectly at his throat. At 28, he was sharp, ambitious, running faster than I ever could. Newly promoted to COO of a fintech firm downtown, he wore the role with a mixture of pride and exhaustion. His jaw was tense, his eyes shadowed. He looked like a man holding a position he'd fought too hard for too soon. "Coffee?" I asked, already pouring before he answered. "Always," he muttered, loosening his watch strap and checking his phone at the same time. Behind him, Megan moved like a counterpoint. 26, with her neat ponytail pulled tight. She had a way of filling the kitchen as if it belonged to her. She was slender, efficient, and always on her phone, today laughing into it on speaker while her hands busied themselves with Tupperware. She had her own routine, slicing fruit with quick, decisive movements, sealing containers with the snap of practiced fingers. "Cafes aren't safe anymore, Mom Linda," she chirped. "Better to eat home-cooked." The way she called me Mom Linda always felt slightly off. Affectionate on the surface, but with a faint metallic edge like sweetness masking vinegar. I had never asked her to call me that. Still, I let it pass. I had learned long ago that sometimes it was easier to smile through discomfort than to confront it. She slid 2 lunchboxes onto the counter. One large, glossy with condensation. One small, neat and compact. The larger she pushed toward Alex, the smaller toward me, as if the gesture were a performance she had rehearsed. "There," she said. "Big man's box, small lady's box. Balanced." It was such a simple thing, so ordinary, that for a moment I felt a tug of warmth. Like we were a unit. A young couple starting their week, and me, still part of the circle, not yet relegated to the margins where aging mothers often end up. I sipped my coffee and let myself believe, for a flicker of time, that life was stable. That my sacrifices had not been wasted. Because there had been sacrifices. Years of them. I remembered the decades of holding everything together after Alex's father left. The nights I worked double shifts at the cosmetics counter, my feet aching, my smile fixed for strangers, while Alex slept on a cot in the stockroom because I couldn't afford a sitter. The nights when he was small and feverish, and I held him in one arm while with the other I mixed trial batches of oils, trying to invent something that might sell. I had built the studio piece by piece, turning borrowed space into a laboratory, then into a storefront. Every spare cent went to his education. Private school tuition checks that I mailed while eating canned soup for dinner. The first semester of college paid by pawning the last jewelry I had from my grandmother. And now, here he was, tall, commanding, successful. A man with a title, a salary, a reputation. Proof, I told myself, that I had not failed. Proof that my sacrifices had meant something. Megan laughed again at something on her phone. Her laughter had a cutting quality, as though it wasn't about joy but about winning. She snapped the lids of the boxes shut with a firmness that made me glance up. "You'll thank me," she said lightly, sliding the big one into Alex's bag. "Home food is safer. More reliable." The word reliable hung in the air longer than it should have. I didn't know why it unsettled me, but it did. Alex leaned down, kissed my cheek quickly, then checked the time. "I've got to go, Mom. Board call in 15. And just like that, he was out the door. Megan lingered half a beat, wiping the counter with a cloth, scanning the kitchen with a gaze that always felt like evaluation rather than presence. Then she too was gone, ponytail swinging. I stood at the table, coffee cooling in my hand, perfume samples catching the sunlight. Everything looked domestic, cozy. Too cozy, maybe. Because beneath the warmth was a faint chill. A silence in the wake of their departure that felt heavier than it should have. I looked at the small lunchbox sitting beside my purse. Harmless. Insignificant. A plastic container packed with care. And yet, I would come to remember it as the first stone in the avalanche. I could not know it then, but that lunchbox, big and small, switched in a heartbeat, would become the fulcrum of betrayal. The moment on which everything balanced, before it all tilted into ruin. The decision was presented to me as if it were already settled. That Monday afternoon, Alex came home early, Megan close behind him, both flushed from the autumn wind off Elliott Bay. He carried only a garment bag and laptop case. She had 3 boxes stacked precariously in her arms, the kind of cardboard that screamed temporary move but weighed with permanence. "Mom," Alex began, adjusting his cuffs as though the gesture could soften the news. "We'll be staying here at your waterfront place. Just until the remodel is finished. Contractor says it'll take 6 weeks, maybe 8. I blinked, coffee mug still warm in my hands. "Here? In my apartment?" "Of course," Megan chimed in before Alex could answer. "It makes sense. Saves money, avoids the dust. We'll be out of your hair before you even notice." But I had already noticed, the way she swept through the entryway without waiting for permission, the way her eyes darted around the living room as though measuring what would soon be hers. She dropped her boxes on my rug with a thud that felt like intrusion. The remodel, I knew, was no modest project. They were gutting their Capitol Hill condo, installing quartz counters and heated bathroom floors. Megan had shown me renderings weeks earlier, her voice gleaming with pride. "We want something timeless, Mom Linda. Something that says we're established." At the time I had smiled, told her it looked lovely. But I hadn't realized the remodel also meant an invasion of my carefully preserved solitude. I tried to find a gracious response. "Well, it's a bit cramped. But I suppose for a short while." That was when Megan turned. Her eyes sharp as glass fixed on me. Her voice, sweet just moments earlier, snapped like a whip. "I'm the boss here," she shouted. "This is my house now. If you don't like it, you can get out to the hallway and eat with the bums." The words cracked against the walls of my apartment, bouncing back at me like a slap. For a moment I just stood there, the mug in my hand trembling. I thought of all the insults I had endured in silence, the little barbs disguised as jokes, the suggestions that my perfume studio was cute, but not a real business, the way Megan always corrected me in front of Alex as if she alone knew best. I had smiled through it all, telling myself I was keeping peace. But this? To be told to eat with the bums in the hallway of my own building? The humiliation was so brazen it almost felt unreal. I caught Alex's eyes. He flinched, his mouth half open, as though he wanted to intervene but had long ago learned that Megan's anger was more dangerous to him than his silence was to me. Something cold settled inside me then. Not rage, no rage I had known before, hot and useless. This was different. This was clarity. I set the coffee mug down with deliberate calm, reached into my handbag and pulled out my phone. Megan was still glaring, certain she had won, that her shrill dominance would force me to retreat as it always did. But instead of shrinking, I pressed record. Her voice filled the tiny microphone. "I'm the boss here. Get out to the hallway and eat with the bums." The sound captured in sterile digital clarity. Her jaw twitched when she realized what I was doing. "Delete that," she hissed. I smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly, simply with the satisfaction of someone who had finally stopped pretending. "No," I said. I opened the HOA app on my phone, navigated to the elevator system, and with 2 taps blocked Megan's keycard. Then I called down to the concierge. My voice was steady, almost pleasant. "Yes, this is Linda. Please note that no additional residents have been approved. If someone tries to enter without me, deny access." Megan sputtered, furious, but I didn't look at her. Instead, I sent the audio file directly to Parker, my lawyer of 20 years, a man who had seen me through lease disputes, trademark filings, even Alex's messy teenage car accident settlement. The message was simple. Keep this on file. I may need it. Alex finally found his voice. Mom will stay. Just don't make this worse. His tone was pleading, but there was resignation beneath it. I turned to him evenly. You can stay, but it will be on my terms, not hers. Megan tried to laugh, but it came out sharp, brittle. You wouldn't dare. I cut her off, my smile still calm. Watch me. The silence that followed was heavier than her scream. For once I was not the trembling one. That evening, after they had retreated to the guest room, my guest room, I reached into my bag to fetch my notebook of fragrance sketches. My fingers brushed against plastic. I pulled out the lunchbox I had tucked there absent-mindedly earlier that morning. It was not the small one Megan had handed me. It was Alex's, the large, heavy box meant for him. I stared at it for a long moment, the condensation beating along its lid like sweat on skin. My reflection in the glossy plastic was warped, doubled. Something in my chest tightened, though I couldn't yet say why. I set it aside, telling myself I would deal with it tomorrow. But even as I turned off the lights and tried to sleep, I felt its presence on the counter, heavy as an omen. Because I had lived long enough to know. Sometimes betrayal does not arrive with a scream. Sometimes it sits quietly on the table, waiting for you to open the lid. Tuesday at the studio began as it always did. With laughter. My staff arrived in staggered waves, scarves wrapped tight against Seattle's damp September air, carrying paper cups of coffee and the faint chatter of city streets. The small bell on the glass door jingled, a sound that always made me feel like I was still a shopgirl at 20, back when all I owned was hope and a few drops of Rose Absolute. The studio smelled of sandalwood, bergamot, and the faint tang of alcohol solvent. Light spilled in across the shelves lined with brown glass bottles, each labeled in my careful hand. To an outsider it might have looked cluttered. To me it was an orchestra, every violin instrument waiting to be played. Linda, what about the winter launch? Jasmine, my apprentice, asked as she set down her bag. Should we go bolder this year? Maybe oud with saffron? Too heavy for our buyers, I replied, already scribbling notes. But a whisper of cardamom might work. The banter flowed easily. We teased, we tested, we dreamed. This was the one place where I was not Alex's mother or Megan's target. Here I was simply Linda, perfumer, business owner, survivor. Around noon my stomach growled. I reached into my bag and pulled out the lunchbox. The large one. I frowned. Megan's neat handwriting was on the lid in black marker. Alex. A small doodle of a heart beside it. For a moment I almost laughed, the kind of domestic flourish she used for appearances. Clearly, in my rush the night before, I had switched the boxes. Guess I'll be eating like a COO today, I muttered. I set the box on the counter, snapping open the lid. Inside was stew, rich, dark, aromatic. Carrots, beef, potatoes. The kind of hearty dish Alex liked, though Megan rarely cooked anything from scratch. I lifted the lid fully and froze. Around the rim of the plastic container was a dusting of fine white crystals. Not clumped like salt, not dissolved like seasoning. A rim deliberate, like the sugared edge of a cocktail glass. My breath caught. Weird, I whispered. Something wrong? Jasmine asked. Probably nothing. But my hand was trembling. I lifted the box closer to the light. The crystals glittered faintly, clinging to the condensation. I dipped a fingertip, rubbed it between my fingers. It did not melt against the skin. This isn't sugar, I murmured. An unease crawled up my spine. I sealed the box and carried it straight to Cole's desk. Cole had joined me 3 years earlier as a consultant when I expanded distribution. Before perfumes, he had worked in toxicology, a past he rarely spoke of but one I suddenly needed. Cole, I said quietly, placing the box before him. Tell me what you see. He raised an eyebrow but humored me, sliding his glasses higher. He tilted the container, letting the light catch on the rim. His fingers, practiced, touched the residue. He sniffed, frowned, rubbed it between thumb and forefinger. And then I saw the color drain from his face. Who cooked this? His voice was low, urgent. Megan, I whispered. She packed the lunches. I think we switched. For a long moment he said nothing. Then his jaw clenched. Linda. Hospital. Right now. Don't ask questions. Don't waste time. What? If Alex ate from his box, he's in danger. If you did, you're in danger. We don't argue with possibilities here. His urgency sliced through my hesitation. Around us, the staff's chatter died into uneasy silence. Cole lowered his voice further. Linda, I can't be 100% without tests, but I've seen this before. Fine crystalline residue. Bitter almond undertone. This looks like arsenic. The word struck me like a hammer. Arsenic. My knees almost buckled. I gripped the counter to stay upright. Are you certain? I croaked. I'm certain enough to know we're out of time. Chronic doses mimic stress, indigestion, fatigue. How many times has Alex complained about stomach pain lately? My memory jolted. Alex rubbing his midsection 2 weeks ago, blaming all-nighters at work. His constant fatigue. The dark crescents under his eyes. Too many times, I whispered. Cole pressed the container back into my hands, sealing it inside a plastic evidence bag from his drawer. Take this to Harborview. I'll call ahead. Don't explain to anyone on the way. And Linda, text Alex right now. Tell him not to touch a bite of his lunch. Say whatever you need, but make sure he gets checked immediately. And for God's sake, don't let Megan know yet. The air in the studio had shifted. The laughter was gone. Even the fragrances seemed acrid, wrong. My fingers shook as I pulled out my phone. Alex, stop. Don't eat. Not one bite. Go to Harborview. Tell them Cole sent you. Don't explain to anyone. Not even Megan. I hit send. The 3 dots appeared, then vanished. My heart pounded in my throat. Cole's hand was firm on my shoulder. Go. I clutched the evidence bag like it contained my whole life. Because in a way it did. I walked out into the gray Seattle afternoon. The smell of rain and diesel in the air. The city moved around me, buses roaring, people rushing, oblivious. I hailed a car with numb fingers, slid into the back seat, and whispered the address. Harborview Medical Center. The driver nodded, pulled into traffic. I stared out the window as the skyline blurred. All I could see was the rim of white crystals, clinging like frost to the plastic edge. And I thought, perfume and poison. Both invisible. Both delivered in trace amounts. Both capable of seduction or destruction. And Megan, with her bright laughter, her tidy ponytail, her mom Linda's sweetness, had been mixing the two in my kitchen. Harborview always smelled the same. Antiseptic sharpness overlaid with the faint sweetness of hand sanitizer. It was a smell I usually associated with safety, with healing. But as the sliding doors hissed open and I stepped into the fluorescent glare, that smell struck me differently. Today it smelled like exposure, like secrets being scrubbed raw. Cole's call had cleared the way. A nurse was waiting near triage, her scrubs a cheerful shade of teal that clashed with the grim set of her mouth. I handed over the sealed bag. She held it gingerly, as if it were a vial of plague. Straight to the toxicology lab, she said into her headset, already moving. I followed her to a waiting area lined with vinyl chairs, their seams cracked from years of use. The clock above reception ticked too loudly, each second a hammer driving into my chest. I sat, clutching my purse, feeling the weight of every moment I had wasted in ignorance. Alex was somewhere in the building. He had texted back once. At Harborview now. Getting checked. What's happening? I hadn't answered. How could I? How could I tell my son that his wife, the woman he trusted, the woman I had welcomed into my home, might be trying to k*ll him spoonful by spoonful? A mother's mind reaches for memories when panic takes hold. Mine did, unbidden. I saw Alex at 5 standing in Volunteer Park with a fistful of dandelions, his cheeks sticky with melted ice cream. I saw him at 17 walking across the stage at graduation, his grin so wide I could see the crooked tooth he refused braces for. I saw him just last year, exhausted but proud, calling me at midnight to say he had landed the COO promotion. And then I saw him more recently, pale at the breakfast table, rubbing his stomach. Stress, he'd said. Too many board calls. Too much takeout. I had believed him. Because what mother suspects poison in her son's soup? The hallway echoed with rolling gurneys, the squeak of rubber saws, the occasional sharp cry muffled behind curtains. I pressed my palms together so tightly the bones ached. After what felt like a lifetime, a man in a white coat appeared. His badge read Ethan Lucas, Toxicology. His face was grave. eyes shadowed with the weight of having to deliver truths that shatter lives. Mrs. Harris? His voice was calm, measured, but not gentle. He did not waste softness on what he was about to say. Yes. My throat was dry. He glanced at the folder in his hands, then back at me. The food sample you brought in has tested positive. High concentrations of arsenic. The word rang again, harder this time. Arsenic. A poison out of old novels, out of whispered family legends. Not something that belonged in a 21st century lunchbox in Seattle. Dr. Lucas continued, his tone clipped. Chronic ingestion of arsenic leads to gastrointestinal distress, fatigue, abdominal pain, nausea. Over time it damages the liver, kidneys, and heart. It is cumulative. Each dose compounds the damage. My vision blurred at the edges. The clinical terms landed like blows. Liver, kidneys, heart. Organs of life dismantled grain by grain. Your son has been showing symptoms, you said? Yes. Stomach pain. Exhaustion. He thought it was stress. Dr. Lucas nodded grimly. Classic presentation. If he's been ingesting small amounts for weeks or months, the damage may already be significant. We'll need full panels, cardiac monitoring, chelation therapy if levels confirm acute exposure. But, he hesitated. The fact that he is alive means intervention is possible. Timing is critical. Alive. Intervention possible. My mind snagged on those words like a drowning woman on driftwood. I managed to whisper. If he had eaten today's meal? The doctor met my eyes, and his silence was answer enough. My hands went cold. I felt as though the hospital floor had tilted beneath me, dropping me into an abyss. The container had looked so ordinary. Brown stew. Carrots. A rim of white crystals that could have passed for salt. Death disguised as nourishment. I thought of Megan's bright voice that morning. Cafes aren't safe anymore, Mom Linda. Better to eat home-cooked. The irony was so sharp it cut through my grief. Safe, she had called it. Safer than cafes. And she had been sprinkling poison in my kitchen while laughing on speakerphone. I forced myself to steady. Doctor, what happens now? We admit Alex for monitoring. We'll run hair and nail analysis to determine duration of exposure. Law enforcement will be notified. Arsenic poisoning is never accidental. He said the last words firmly, as though he had seen denial too many times. Never accidental. I nodded, though my body felt detached, as if I were watching myself agree. When he left, I walked out into the hallway. The antiseptic smell seemed sharper now, burning my nostrils. Nurses moved briskly past. Families huddled in corners, lives on the edge of unraveling. I was just another mother among them, clutching her purse as if it were armor. But unlike them, I carried a secret. A plastic bag of evidence. Proof that death had been cooked into a meal in my own kitchen. I stepped outside for air. The city sky was gray, low clouds pressing down. Rain threatened but did not fall. I looked out over the hospital's terrace and thought of Alex as a boy again, running across wet grass, his shoes caked in mud, his laughter pure. I thought of how many nights I had gone without food so he could have more. How I had handed over every ounce of myself to make his life safer. And now, someone he trusted with his life had been dosing him like an experiment. The lunchbox had been no accident. And the rim of crystals was not sugar. It was intent. Cold, deliberate intent. I tightened my grip on the evidence bag, my knuckles white. The nurse's words echoed in my mind. Straight to the lab. And the doctor's final certainty. Never accidental. The ground had dropped out beneath me. But one truth stood steady. This was war. And I would not lose my son. I didn't go home after Harborview. Home no longer felt like a place of safety. It felt like a stage where every gesture, every bite of food, every word spoken in my kitchen was part of a script I hadn't written. Instead, I went straight to Parker. His office overlooked the sound. A wall of windows framing gray water and gulls wheeling against low clouds. I had known Parker for 20 years. He was there when I incorporated my perfume studio, when I trademarked my first scent, when I bought the waterfront condo after a decade of penny pinching. He had seen me through seasons of struggle and survival. Linda, he said, standing as I entered. His tone was calm but sharpened by concern. Cole briefed me. Sit down. I sat, my hands folded too tightly in my lap. He opened a file, my file, and spread its contents across the polished wood of his desk. Paper, ink, numbers. My entire life reduced to columns and clauses. Your assets, he said evenly. Perfume studio, valued at approximately $3.5 million. Waterfront condominium, market value $1.8 million. Savings and retirement accounts just over $900,000. I stared at the numbers. They didn't look like me. They didn't look like the years of missed meals, the nights of exhaustion, the decades of clawing my way from department store counters to my own brand. They looked cold, detached. And your will, Parker continued, sliding the document forward. Drafted 6 years ago. Current clause. Assets split evenly between Alex and Megan. But there's a survivorship condition. Meaning. My voice was thin. Meaning if one dies, the other inherits all. The words fell heavy, final. If Alex died first, Megan inherited everything. Every vial in my studio, every square foot of my condo, every cent in my accounts. I felt my throat tighten. So if Alex. Yes. Megan becomes sole heir. And eventually, with your passing, she consolidates the estate. I leaned back, the room tilting. How many times had I told myself Megan was simply curious, simply young, when she asked about values, about transfers, about succession? I remembered her voice one evening over dinner, swirling wine in her glass. If you're not in charge someday, Mom, I'll keep the brand running. She had said it lightly, almost playfully. At the time I'd smiled, touched by the idea of continuity. Now those words curdled in my memory. Not continuity. Calculation. I saw her again, leaning casually against my counter months earlier, asking about the loft property value. Wouldn't it make sense to refinance, Mom Linda? Equity is just sleeping money. I had laughed then, thinking it was youthful ambition talking. But what if it had been reconnaissance? Even the spa invitation she had texted me last week floated back. I booked us a Saturday package, Mom Linda. Relaxing time for the girls. How warm it had seemed. How false it looked now. A distraction. A smoothing over while poison simmered. I pressed a hand to my forehead. Parker. I didn't see it. I didn't see any of it. He shook his head. You trusted your family. That's not blindness. That's human. But it felt like blindness. It felt like I had been staring at danger for years and smiling at it, offering it coffee, calling it daughter. Parker leaned forward, his voice firm. We'll redraft. We'll strip survivorship. We'll create protections. But Linda, this isn't just estate planning anymore. This is defense. Defense. The word rattled through me. For so long my life had been about building a business, building a home, building stability for Alex. Defense was something I thought belonged to others, soldiers, lawyers, people in different stories. But now defense was mine. I looked down at the will. The ink seemed to shimmer with betrayal. What I had once written as love had become a wee *p***n. Change it, I said. My voice surprised me with its steadiness. Whatever it takes. Change everything. Parker nodded. We will. But carefully. Quietly. If Megan suspects, she'll accelerate. The word accelerate caught me. Because suddenly the timeline made sense. Megan had been patient while the will favored her, dosing Alex slowly, waiting. But the moment she sensed change, any threat to her guaranteed inheritance, she would strike. Parker closed the file gently. Linda, I need you to understand. This isn't just greed. This is premeditation. Every question, every remark she made about the business, about the condo, it was groundwork. She's been setting this up. I nodded slowly. My mind replayed the montage of years. Megan's polite laughter at family dinners, her way of volunteering to help with documents, her sudden interest in my studio's expansion. I had thought it was engagement. It was ambition. And ambition, married to greed, had turned lethal. When I left Parker's office, dusk had settled over the sound. Lights flickered on across the city, warm squares against the growing dark. People were heading to dinners, to homes, to loved ones. My phone buzzed. A new message from Megan. Mom Linda, I booked us a spa package Saturday. Just us girls. We deserve it. I stared at the screen, the cheerful exclamation marks. I typed back. I'll be busy. But inside my reply was colder, sharper. Busy defending my son. Busy dismantling the trap you built. Busy becoming the version of myself you never imagined. The one who doesn't smile, doesn't excuse, doesn't forgive. Because the will had changed everything. And so had I. The next morning I didn't wait for Alex to come home. I went to him. South Lake Union gleamed with glass towers, cranes, and the sharp smell of concrete dust. Tech firms lined the streets like shrines to ambition. It was Alex's kingdom now, sleek, efficient, high-rise. I entered the lobby of his building, passed a receptionist with a polished smile, and took the elevator to the 24th floor. His office was minimalist. Glass walls, a desk that looked too clean to have ever borne real work. He stood at the window when I entered, shoulders squared, phone pressed to his ear. His suit fit him like armor. He looked every inch the COO he had become, confident, commanding. But when he saw me standing in the doorway, clutching a folder, his composure faltered. "Mom? What are you doing here?" I crossed the room without answering, set the folder on his desk, and slid it toward him. Inside were the lab report from Harborview and a copy of my will Parker had shown me. "Read," I said. His brow furrowed. He opened the report first. The words "arsenic detected" stared up at him in stark black type. I watched the blood drain from his face. "Arsenic in my food?" His voice cracked. I nodded. The lunchbox switched. "I opened yours. There were crystals on the rim." Cole recognized it. The hospital confirmed. He sank into his chair, staring at the report as though it might rearrange itself if he looked long enough. "But Megan, she cooks for me." She poisoned you," I said, steady but cold. "Not once. Not by accident. Chronic doses. That stomach pain you blamed on stress? Not stress. Poison." His mouth open, closed. His hand went to his hair, tugging at it like he used to when he was a boy stuck on a math problem. "No. She wouldn't." "She would," I cut in. I pushed the will forward. "And if you died, everything, my studio, my condo, my savings would go to her. Not you. Not us. Her." He read the clause once, twice. His disbelief melted into silence, then into something darker. The realization sank into him slowly, crushing him from the inside. "She married me for this," he whispered. I didn't answer. Some truths are too heavy to affirm out loud. For a long moment, the only sound was the muted hum of the city beyond the glass. Then I placed my hand gently on his. "We're going to the police." His head snapped up, panic in his eyes. "If she finds out." "She won't," I said. "Not until it's too late." We walked out of that polished tower like ghosts and hailed a car to the precinct. The air inside smelled of old paper, sweat, and disinfectant, the opposite of his glass office but somehow more honest. Detective Ramirez met us in a conference room. He was in his 50s with iron gray hair and eyes that didn't flinch. He listened without interrupting as I laid out the sequence. The switched lunchboxes, the crystals, Cole's reaction, the Harborview tests, the will. When I finished, he exhaled slowly. "You've done the right thing. We'll take it from here." He pulled the evidence bag closer, labeling it carefully, signing the chain of custody log with deliberate strokes. Then he looked at Alex. "You're lucky," he said bluntly. "If your mother hadn't noticed, if she hadn't acted, you'd be dead by now." Alex swallowed hard. His hands shook. Ramirez continued, his tone sharpening. "Here's what we'll do. We'll install hidden cameras in your kitchen and common areas. We'll collect more food samples. We'll monitor her movements. But evidence alone isn't enough, we need motive." "Motive?" Alex asked, voice hollow. "Money," Ramirez said flatly. 90% of poisonings come down to money or power. If she thinks your mother's assets are about to slip through her fingers, she'll rush. And greed makes people sloppy." I nodded. My chest tightened but the clarity steadied me. "Then we show her it's slipping away." Ramirez leaned back, studying me. "You're strong. You'll need to be. This isn't just an investigation. It's a performance. If she suspects we're watching, she'll stop. You need to act normal. Play along. Make her believe everything's fine, until she overreaches." Alex shook his head. "I can't face her. I can't sit at the same table." "You can," Ramirez said firmly. "You will. And you'll pretend to eat what she serves." I put a hand on my son's arm. We'll do it together. You won't be alone. Ramirez's gaze held mine. Good. Then let's set the trap. The trap had to begin with words. Not evidence, not confrontation. Just words dropped like seeds, watered with performance until Megan revealed herself. That afternoon, Parker agreed to stage the call. We arranged it so I would be in the kitchen with my phone on speaker, Megan with an tea. I brewed tea with deliberate slowness, waiting until I heard her footsteps cross the living room. Then I tapped the green icon and Parker's measured voice filled the air. Linda, we've finalized the paperwork draft, he said. His tone was professional but carried a subtle emphasis, a performance for the unseen audience. In 3 weeks we'll execute the new will. As you requested, 80% of your estate to the Foundation for Crisis Housing. The remainder held in trust for Alex, released in stages. I felt rather than saw Megan pause behind me, a shadow in the doorway. Yes, I said evenly, stirring sugar into my tea I had no intention of drinking. It's time. The money will serve better there than in anyone's pockets. Silence from the doorway. Then the faintest sound, ceramic against glass. Megan's hand brushing the tray she carried. Parker continued. We'll ensure airtight clauses. No survivorship loopholes. No automatic transfers. Transparent, accountable. Perfect, I said, projecting calm satisfaction. When I ended the call, Megan walked past with a tray of cups, her smile stretched too wide. Tea time, she chirped. But her fingers were rigid around the glass stems. I thanked her politely as though nothing had changed. But I had seen the crack. At dinner I pushed it further. The 3 of us sat around the table, the overhead light casting sharp shadows. Megan ladled soup into bowls, her movements a little too careful. I watched the tremor in her wrist as I spoke. I've been thinking, I said casually, slicing bread. When I die, it won't be wasted. The foundation will help women and children who have no home. That's real legacy. Alex kept his gaze on his plate, silent. Megan's smile flashed, bright and false. That's noble, she said. But her knuckles whitened around the wineglass stem until crack. A hairline fracture splintered through the glass. She set it down quickly, masking the slip with another smile. I pretended not to notice, but my heart beat harder. It was working. The bait was in the water. That night, when the house settled into quiet, I stood outside their room. The door was closed but not soundproof. Megan's voice, low and urgent, slipped through the crack. We can't wait. It has to be done sooner. Alex's muffled protest followed, too soft to catch every word, but Megan's hiss was clear. Don't argue. She's cutting us out. We don't have time. I lifted my phone, pressed record. The glowing red icon captured every syllable. The next morning I sent the audio to Ramirez. His reply came within minutes. Good. She's rattled. Cameras go in today. By noon, plainclothes officers had installed pinhole lenses in the pantry, the vent above the stove, the corner of the dining room. They blended seamlessly into the background, the quiet eyes of the law. As I watched them test the feeds from Ramirez's office, I thought back to every kind moment Megan had staged. The spa invitations, the feigned concern about my workload, the way she always volunteered to pour wine but never to wash dishes. It all clicked into place. She had never been building a family. She had been building a case, a future in which I died conveniently and she inherited the spoils. Now the performance belonged to me. And every line I spoke, every smile I gave was a step toward her undoing. The first time I saw my kitchen on a police monitor, my stomach twisted. Detective Ramirez led me into a surveillance room tucked behind frosted glass at the precinct. It smelled of stale coffee and electronics, wires coiled like veins across the desks, monitors humming faintly. On the largest screen was my home, fractured into angles. The pantry, the stove, the dining table. Places that had once been sanctuaries of warmth now stared back at me in sterile black and white. This is where she'll betray herself, Ramirez said quietly. I sat, my fingers digging crescents into the armrest. For years I had chopped herbs on that counter, kneaded dough, stirred soups for Alex when he was sick. Now every familiar surface felt corrupted. The feed flickered. Megan appeared. She wore her usual armor. Apron tied tight, hair pulled back in a severe ponytail. She moved with purpose, opening the spice cabinet, lifting jars. But instead of cumin or oregano, she reached for a small vial from her purse. My breath caught. She unscrewed it, tilting the glass. White powder spilled, delicate as snow, into the simmering pot. She stirred quickly, her shoulders tense, then tucked the vial back into her pocket. My nails dug so hard into the chair I half expected the wood to crack. Beside me, Ramirez placed a steady hand on my shoulder. "Hold steady. We need more than one act." I forced myself to breathe, but bile rose in my throat. Watching someone lace soup with poison is different from suspecting it. Suspicion leaves space for doubt. Seeing it shatters all mercy. That evening, Alex played his role. Megan set bowls before us, her smile syrupy. Homemade. Just like always. I watched every detail. Her hands lingering as she placed his bowl closer than mine. Her expectant glance as he lifted the spoon. Alex dipped, sipped, then faltered. His face blanched. He clutched his temple. "Dizzy," he murmured, swaying in his chair. Megan's mask flickered but held. She gasped, rushed to fetch water. "You're overworked, love. Too many hours. Drink." Her voice quivered with rehearsed concern. He sipped obediently. I placed my spoon down untouched, excusing myself with a feigned cough. In the kitchen, I swapped his bowl for a sealed container I had prepared earlier. The poisoned soup went into an evidence bag. By midnight, lab results confirmed it. Double the arsenic levels of the first sample. Ramirez called me with the verdict. "She's accelerating." The Foundation news rattled her. "She's panicking," adding more. "It won't be long before she makes a mistake big enough to bury her." I stood at my balcony, phone pressed to my ear, watching the lights of the ferries drift across Elliott Bay. The city buzzed with indifferent life while I held the knowledge that death had been ladled from my kitchen. Each time after that, I intercepted the first serving. Each time my hands trembled less. I learned to watch Megan's fingers, the way they shook just slightly when she stirred, the way she avoided meeting my eyes when she set bowls down. Her greed was devouring her mask. And the cameras saw all. It began with a plan that felt like madness. Detective Ramirez laid it out across the precinct table, diagrams and notes spread like a blueprint for theater rather than police work. "The final blow is a staged collapse," he said. "We make her believe Alex has died. Shock makes people drop pretenses. Grief, if real, is raw. Greed, when satisfied, speaks freely. We need her words. We need her to celebrate." My throat constricted. Celebrate. The word twisted my stomach. To imagine Megan relieved at my son's death was unbearable, but I had already seen her hand tremble when she realized she might lose her inheritance. If greed was stronger than love, then yes, she would celebrate. Harborview prepared a room. Dear Laura Vaughn, head of toxicology, agreed to participate. "We'll wire the monitors," she explained. "Flatline on cue. Chart will read acute arsenic poisoning, cardiac arrest." Her professionalism didn't hide the shadow in her eyes. Pity, maybe, or horror at how far this had gone. I signed consent forms with shaking hands. Every line I wrote felt like carving into stone. Alex, pale but resolute, stood beside me. "Mom, I can do this," he whispered. His voice was steady, but I saw the boy I had once held through nightmares. And now I had to watch him pretend to die. That evening the trap began. Megan prepared soup again, sprinkling unseen powder while the cameras watched. Her smile was forced, stretched. "Eat up, darling. You need your strength." Alex lifted the spoon, sipped, then set it down. Paused too long. Then he pressed his stomach, face contorting. He swayed in his chair, gasped. His hand knocked the spoon to the floor. "Alex?" I cried, rushing to his side. He groaned, collapsed against the table, then slid to the ground. His body stilled. Megan screamed. High, shrill, rehearsed concern. She dropped beside him, patting his cheek. "Love? Wake up. Please." I fumbled my phone, dialing the number Ramirez had given me. It connected to undercover officers posing as EMT dispatch. "My son." I sobbed into the line, the grief too easy to summon. "He's collapsed. Please hurry." Within minutes, sirens wailed outside. 2 paramedics, officers in disguise, burst in with a stretcher. They worked with mechanical efficiency, lifting Alex's limp form. attaching monitors that obediently flashed critical. Megan clutched at one of them. "I'm coming." But I caught her wrist squeezing hard. My voice was low, steel under velvet. "No. I'll go." Her eyes flashed, fury barely masked. "I'm his wife. And I'm his mother," I snapped. The officers whisked Alex away. I climbed into the ambulance, Megan left standing on the curb. Inside, the sirens screamed. Alex's eyes flickered open briefly. "I'm with you, Mom," he whispered. Tears slid down my cheeks. I brushed his hair back. "Stay with me," I whispered, even though I knew it was an act. But my heart didn't. My heart felt the fear as if it were real. At Harborview, the room was ready. Machines beeped. IVs dripped clear saline. Dr. Vaughn nodded once. On cue, the monitor flatlined. A single shrill tone filled the air, endless. I staggered back, clutching my chest. The sound pierced bone. Even knowing it was false, it split me open. My son flatlined on a screen. My boy, who once tugged my sleeve asking for one more bedtime story. I texted Megan with shaking hands. "Come immediately." Alex didn't make it. The words blurred through my tears. Writing them felt like writing my own death sentence. Then I sat by the bed, staring at Alex's pale stillness under the sheet. The mic hidden in the pillow blinked faintly. "We waited for her," I whispered into the silence. "Forgive me, Alex. Forgive me for making you die so she can be revealed." The hospital room was dim, lit only by the blue glow of machines and the faint slant of city light through blinds. Alex lay beneath the sheet, skin powdered to a ghostly pallor by the makeup team. Electrodes clung to his chest, the monitor flatlined in a steady whine. Every detail whispered death. I stood at the foot of the bed, my arms wrapped around myself, as if holding in what remained of my heart. I had sent the message minutes earlier, "Come immediately." Alex didn't make it. Now all that remained was waiting. The door burst open. Megan stumbled in, hair mussed, eyes rimmed red. Whether the tears were genuine or squeezed from calculation, I couldn't tell. She rushed to the bedside, her movements almost frantic, but when her hand touched Alex's still one, something flickered across her face. Not devastation. Not grief. Relief. She leaned close, her whisper just loud enough for the mic under the pillow. "Finally," she breathed, her voice quivering with release. "It's over." I froze. Her words hung in the sterile air like smoke. She pressed her forehead to his hand, and I saw her shoulders loosen, as though a weight had lifted. Relief. That was her grief. My nails dug into my palms until I felt skin break. And then Alex's eyes snapped open. Megan jerked back, her mouth opening in a silent scream. "No. You impossible." He sat up slowly, peeling the sheet back, the monitor still shrilling. "I heard you," he said, his voice low, steady with fury. "I heard every word." Megan scrambled to her feet, backing into the corner. "No, you don't understand. I was careful." The door opened again. Ramirez stepped inside, two uniformed officers flanking him. He carried a folder thick with paper. His voice was steel. "Megan Harris, you are under arrest for attempted murder." Her head whipped from him to me, to Alex, to the cameras glinting in the ceiling corners. "No. This isn't real. This is some trick." Ramirez laid the evidence out on the table beside the bed, each piece like a hammer strike. Kitchen footage. Lab reports from Harborview. Audio of you conspiring. Tonight's whisper over his body. He looked her dead in the eyes. "Do you want to keep denying? Or do you want to start explaining?" Megan's face crumpled, shifting from rage to desperation. She clutched at the bedrail, her voice rising shrill. "It wasn't poison, it was vitamins. He's weak, he needs supplements. That's all." Ramirez didn't flinch. "Arsenic isn't a vitamin." She shook her head violently, words tumbling over themselves. "He was always sick. I just wanted him strong, Her voice broke. "I just wanted the money." She was going to give it all to charity. The last sentence tore from her like a confession dragged out by force. Her body sagged as the words echoed, bouncing off the sterile walls. The officers moved in. The metallic click of handcuffs closed around her wrists, sharp, final. She thrashed once, then stilled, glaring at me with eyes stripped of pretense. For a second I saw her true face. Not the chirping wife with her ponytail neat. Not the smiling hostess at family dinners, but the predator who had crept into my home and laced my son's meals with poison. "Mom Linda," she hissed, mocking the name she had used like honey. "This isn't victory. This is war." The officers pulled her away. The door slammed shut behind them. Silence fell, broken only by the soft beep of the monitor now reset to normal rhythm. Alex swung his legs over the side of the bed, his face pale but alive. I sank into the chair beside him, my body trembling with exhaustion. "It's over," I whispered. But the words tasted bitter. Because victory did not feel sweet. It felt heavy, like a body lowered into earth, like a truth too dark to celebrate. Alex reached for my hand, his grip firm, steady. His eyes were red, not with tears but with fury that hadn't yet found release. "She tried to kill me in our own home," he said hoarsely. "I slept beside her every night. I stroked his hand though mine shook. And I ate at her table, trusted her laughter." The truth pressed down like iron. We had won, but at the cost of innocence that could never be reclaimed. Ramirez gathered the evidence, nodding once at me. "You saved him," he said simply, before leaving us in the dim room. I looked at my son, pale, alive, devastated. Relief and grief tangled in my chest until I could no longer tell them apart. Victory was ours. But it was victory forged in poison, in betrayal, in handcuffs. Victory that felt like ashes. The interview room was a gray box, windowless except for the two-way glass where I stood. Inside, Megan sat at a metal table, wrists cuffed, hair disheveled from the struggle of her arrest. Gone was the polished ponytail, the curated smile. She looked smaller now but not fragile, cornered. Beside her sat a weary public defender, flipping through papers with the air of a man already defeated. Across from her, Detective Ramirez placed a recorder on the table and clicked it on. The red light glowed. "Megan Harris," he began, his voice measured. "You are here voluntarily with legal counsel. Do you understand?" She nodded, barely audible. Her eyes darted everywhere but the glass. "Good. Then let's start simple. Why arsenic?" Her mouth twisted. "It wasn't arsenic. It was supplements. He was weak. He needed." Ramirez cut her off, sliding a lab report across the table. "Not vitamins. Not supplements. Arsenic. Confirmed by 2 independent tests." Silence. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Megan's shoulders slumped, then rose in a shuddering breath. "Fine," she whispered. "It was arsenic." My own breath caught on the other side of the glass. Hearing her say it stripped away any last shred of denial. Ramirez leaned forward. "Where did you get it?" Her eyes flicked toward the recorder, then back. "Online. Forums. People talk if you know where to look. Then a guy outside the city, cash only." "How long?" Ramirez pressed. Her voice cracked. "Months. Just a little in his food every day. Enough to keep him sick, not enough to kill fast. He blamed work stress. It was easy." Alex, standing beside me, flinched as if struck. His hand clenched into a fist, his knuckles white. Megan continued, her words spilling faster now, like water breaking through a dam. "I planned it slowly. If he died of stress, who would question? A young executive, overworked. Natural." Her lawyer murmured, "Megan," but she pushed on as though confession itself was a relief. "When she jerked her chin toward the glass though she couldn't see me. When she said she was changing the will, giving everything to charity, I panicked. Years of planning gone. I couldn't wait anymore. I had to finish it." I pressed my palm against the glass, steadying myself. Every memory of her chirping Mom Linda, every spa invite, every faux-concerned question about my accounts twisted in my mind like a knife. It had all been theater. Ramirez asked quietly, "And after Alex?" Her silence stretched. Then in a voice flat as stone, "She was next. Natural, of course. Age stress. No one would suspect." The lawyer's pen froze mid-note. Alex staggered back from the glass as if he had been punched. His face was gray, his jaw trembling. Megan's voice grew harsher, desperate. "I deserved it. I kept the house clean, cooked, smiled. I played the part. I earned it more than anyone. And then she was going to throw it away on strangers." Her eyes burned, her face twisted not with guilt but with fury. That money was supposed to be mine. Ramirez switched off the recorder with a snap. The silence afterward felt heavier than her confession. Through the glass I saw my son's reflection overlay hers. His face hollow with grief, hers distorted with greed. Two lives bound once by marriage, now severed by poison and truth. I touched Alex's arm gently. "We'll finish this," I whispered. My voice was steady though inside I was breaking. "Together." He didn't look at me. His eyes were locked on Megan, the woman he had once vowed to love, now revealed as the hand that had stirred death into his meals. I thought poison was the worst thing she had given him. But betrayal was deadlier still. The story hit the headlines before the ink on Megan's statement was dry. Seattle COO's wife arrested for poison plot. Arsenic in the lunchbox. A tale of greed and betrayal. The newspapers loved the irony. Fintech's golden boy nearly undone not by markets, but by meals. The anchors spoke my son's name with practiced gravity, replaying the grainy kitchen footage on loops. Megan's face, once bright with curated innocence, glared from mugsh **, eyes hollow, lips pressed thin. Alex's firm scrambled to contain the fallout. A press conference was called, executives in dark suits lining the stage. "Our thoughts are with Alex Harris and his family as they navigate this private tragedy," the CEO intoned. Private, though every camera lens magnified our grief. The market shivered but stabilized. Money has no conscience. It moves wherever stability points. For me, the days blurred into paperwork in courtrooms. Parker filed new documents. The perfume studio secured into a trust, 80% marked irrevocably for the Crisis Housing Foundation. "No automatic windfalls," he said, his pen scratching finality across the page. "Transparency. Protection. Not even whispers of inheritance games again." I signed, the ink flowing with a steadiness I did not feel. The foundation itself was born not as bait this time but as truth. We hosted a modest launch in the studio. Shelves lined with amber bottles, air rich with bergamot and cedar. Reporters snapped photos as I spoke of women and children who needed more than fragrance, who needed walls and warmth. The cameras flashed, but my words were not performance. Out of poison, something cleaner would rise. Alex stood beside me, his suit hanging looser on his frame. The doctors at Harborview monitored his blood weekly, noting how arsenic leached slowly from his body, how organs strained then healed. His face, once taut with ambition, now bore the shadow of survival. One evening weeks later we sat together on my balcony overlooking Elliott Bay. The city glittered with indifferent light. The water lapped quietly against pilings below. "Mom," he said, his voice low, steady, "I'm alive because of you." I studied him, the faint hollows under his eyes, the new caution in his movements. "Alive, yes, but marked." "And I answered, my throat tightening, "held on because of you." We sat in silence, the weight of survival heavy between us. There was no sweetness in victory. Megan's arrest had not restored innocence. It had not erased nights of poison or years of deceit. It had only carved a line between life and death, one we had managed barely to fall on the right side of. I thought of Megan's whisper in that hospital room. "Finally, it's over." She had believed his death was freedom. She had believed inheritance was love. But love is not measured in clauses or bank accounts. Love is in staying, in protecting, in truth spoken before it's too late. The city lights shimmered. A ferry horn echoed across the bay. "Mom," Alex said again, softer now, "will we ever be the same?" I turned to him, my eyes reflecting the glitter of the sound. "No," I said simply. "But we will be alive. And alive means we keep going." Later, alone, I stood at the railing, the cold air sharp against my face. The scars of betrayal do not heal smooth. They stay ridged, reminders of what nearly ended us. But scars are proof too. Proof we survived. And survival is not sweetness. It is clarity. So I leave you this. If something tastes off when it should be familiar, trust yourself. Do not explain it away. Do not smile through it. Because the cost of disbelief is death, and the price of vigilance is only pain. We paid the price. We survived. And survival means we will keep living.